Ethan Reynolds was a man of precision and order. A successful architect in his late 30s, he had built a life as sturdy and structured as the skyscrapers that bore his name. He thought his marriage to Emily was just as unshakable. Emily, 34, was beautiful and ambitious, a marketing executive who had once been Ethan's grounding force. Together, they were a picture of modern success, or so it seemed. That illusion cracked one ordinary Tuesday evening. The dinner table, set with takeout containers from their favorite Thai restaurant, had become the stage for Emily's shocking announcement. She sipped her wine casually, her gaze distant, before placing her glass down with deliberate precision. "I need to talk to you about something," she began, her tone unnervingly calm. Ethan looked up from his pad thai, a forkful frozen mid-air. "What's on your mind?" Emily hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I want an open marriage." The words hit like a bomb. Ethan's hand dropped to the table, the fork clattering against his plate. For a moment, the air seemed to drain from the room. "An open marriage?" he repeated, his voice disbelieving. "Yes," Emily said, meeting his eyes with a strange mixture of defiance and resolve. "I feel like I've missed out on experiences. I need to explore other connections, but I don't want to lose what we have." Ethan blinked, trying to process the absurdity of her words. His pulse pounded in his ears. "What we have? You're saying you want to date other men while staying married to me?" Emily nodded, her expression serious. "I think it could be healthy for us. Other couples do it." "Healthy?" Ethan spat, rising from his chair. "Healthy for whom?" "You." "Ethan, listen," she pleaded, standing as well. "It's not just about me. I'm asking for honesty, for freedom." He stared at her, his jaw tight, emotions warring within him. "You've already started seeing someone, haven't you?" Emily's silence was answer enough. A shocking revelation that night. Ethan barely slept. He lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. The woman he had loved and trusted for 10 years was asking him to share her with strangers. His gut twisted as he replayed her words, each one a dagger. The most haunting part was her calmness, as if she had rehearsed the speech and felt justified. By morning, Ethan's shock had turned to cold resolve. He would not be humiliated. If Emily wanted freedom, he would give it to her, but not in the way she expected. The investigation begins. Ethan spent the next few days in quiet observation. Emily, oblivious to his plans, seemed almost euphoric. She stayed out late, her phone always within reach, her texts punctuated by secretive smiles. Ethan noted every change in her behavior with the meticulous eye of an architect analyzing a blueprint. He wasn't content to wait for Emily to confess the full extent of her betrayal. Using contacts he had cultivated over the years, he hired a discreet private investigator to follow her. It didn't take long for the PI to deliver results. Photographs of Emily at a wine bar, laughing with a man who was decidedly not her husband. The man's hand rested on her knee in one shot, and in another, they were caught in an intimate embrace outside the bar. Ethan clenched his fists as he flipped through the evidence. It wasn't just betrayal, it was brazen. Confrontation and a plan. That evening, Ethan confronted Emily. He laid the photographs on the dining table, one by one, like cards in a game of poker. Emily paled, her earlier confidence faltering. You hired someone to follow me?" "I needed the truth," Ethan said, his voice steady, though his anger simmered just below the surface. "And now I have it." She folded her arms defensively. "I told you I needed more freedom. I was honest with you." "Honest?" Ethan laughed bitterly. "You were honest after the fact. You didn't ask for permission. You informed me of what you were already doing." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but Ethan felt no sympathy. "What do you want, Ethan? To yell? To punish me? I told you what I needed, and I still love you." "No," Ethan said, his voice cold. "You don't love me. You love yourself, and I won't be a part of your self-discovery experiment." "What are you saying?" she whispered. "I'm saying this marriage is over." Emily gasped, the color draining from her face. "You're leaving me?" Ethan's lips curled into a grim smile. "No, Emily, you're leaving me. You wanted freedom, and now you have it." A quiet revenge over the following days. Ethan moved swiftly. He contacted a divorce attorney and set the wheels in motion. Emily, still reeling from the confrontation, seemed to believe he would change his mind. But Ethan had no intention of giving her the chance to wound him further. He transferred their shared savings into an account under his name, leaving Emily with only her personal earnings. He also contacted the landlord of their luxurious apartment, ensuring the lease would be terminated within a month. As a final touch, Ethan crafted a resignation letter on Emily's behalf, severing her lucrative position at the boutique marketing firm he had helped her secure. She didn't know it yet, but her job had relied heavily on his professional connections. Ethan's revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It was calculated. Emily would wake up one day to realize that the freedom she craved had come at an immeasurable cost. Cliffhanger ending on a sunny Friday morning, Emily returned from another late-night outing to find Ethan gone. His belongings, his presence, his influence. Everything had vanished, leaving only an empty apartment and a set of signed divorce papers on the kitchen counter. Her phone buzzed, and she answered without thinking. "Hello? Emily?" Ethan's voice came through, calm and distant. "Enjoy your freedom. You'll need it." The line went dead, leaving Emily clutching the phone, her world crumbling around her. The shock of Ethan's departure didn't hit Emily fully until the next day. Standing in the apartment that now felt cold and foreign, she realized how little she truly understood the man she had betrayed. Ethan's decision to leave wasn't born of anger or impulsiveness. It was calculated, clinical, and utterly final. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from her employer. Termination effective immediately. She reread the subject line 3 times, disbelief washing over her. She clicked the email open to find a cold, generic explanation citing irreconcilable professional concerns. There was no appeal process, no conversation, just a clean severance from the career she had spent years building. Emily felt the first pangs of panic setting in. The job had been her safety net, her proof of independence, even while married to a man like Ethan. Losing it was like being stripped of armor before battle. Unraveling her world, the full weight of Ethan's quiet revenge became clear over the next week. The landlord informed her that their lease would end in 30 days, forcing her to scramble for housing. Attempts to use their joint savings for a new deposit revealed that Ethan had closed the account, leaving only the modest amount in her personal account. When she called their bank to contest the transfer, the representative's response was as cutting as Ethan's tone had been during their last conversation. "Mr. Reynolds was the primary account holder, ma'am. His actions were fully within his rights." Emily dropped her phone onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. For the first time, she felt the true weight of her choices. Ethan wasn't just divorcing her. He was erasing her from his life entirely, ensuring she had no leverage, no remnants of their shared life to hold on to. The illusion of escape desperate for comfort, Emily turned to Derek, the man whose fleeting promises had ignited her desire for an open marriage. They had shared stolen moments of laughter and intimacy, whispers of a life unbound by convention. But when she called him, eager for a lifeline, his response was indifferent. "Emily," he said, his voice tinged with annoyance, "I can't get involved in your drama right now. I told you I wasn't looking for anything serious." Her breath caught. "You what?" "Derek, I left my marriage for this." "Your choice, not mine," he replied. "I never asked you to." Emily stared at her phone in disbelief as Derek ended the call, his indifference more cutting than any insult. She had risked everything for a fantasy that evaporated the moment it faced real consequences. Public humiliation. Word of Ethan and Emily's split spread quickly through their social circles. Ethan, ever composed, managed the narrative without malice but with unmistakable clarity. He didn't badmouth Emily. Instead, he shared just enough of the truth to ensure people understood her betrayal. Emily, by contrast, found herself on the defensive. Mutual friends stopped responding to her texts or canceled plans. Invitations to social gatherings dried up, replaced by whispers and pointed glances when she did attend. At one dinner party she braved, a former friend cornered her, wine glass in hand. "Did you really think you could have it all? Marriage, side flings, no consequences." The question stung, not because it was unfair, but because it was entirely true. Emily had overestimated her control, assuming Ethan would tolerate her indiscretions or that Derek would catch her if she fell. She had underestimated Ethan's quiet strength and overestimated her allure to a man like Derek. Ethan's unexpected glow-up. Meanwhile, Ethan's life seemed to take an upward trajectory. Mutual acquaintances spoke in hushed admiration about how well he was doing. Leaning into his work, hitting the gym, and even posting photos from a solo trip to the Amalfi Coast. The once reserved architect now radiated confidence and independence. The rumors stung Emily more than she cared to admit. She had imagined Ethan would crumble without her, that his structured life would collapse under the weight of her absence. Instead, he had turned the tables entirely, thriving in a way that left her feeling hollow. A chance encounter 2 weeks after Ethan's departure, Emily spotted him in a cafe downtown. He sat with a colleague, laughing and gesturing animatedly. She had rarely seen him so unguarded, so comfortable in his own skin. Her instinct was to approach him, to explain, to apologize. But the sight of his easy smile stopped her. She lingered near the door, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. When Ethan noticed her, his expression shifted, not to anger or pain, but to something far worse, indifference. He gave her a polite nod, then turned his attention back to his companion. The dismissal was a knife to her already fragile pride. Cliffhanger ending that night, Emily sat alone in her nearly empty apartment, the walls echoing with silence. She scrolled through her phone, past pictures of her old life, past the texts she had exchanged with Derek that now felt meaningless. She stopped on a photo of her and Ethan at a work event, their smiles radiant, their arms wrapped around each other. She couldn't reconcile the man in the photo with the one she had seen earlier that day, so composed, so free of her. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to wonder if she had been the villain in her own story. Emily's world continued to unravel as she grasped the full consequences of her decisions. Stripped of her job, her savings, and her reputation, she felt the crushing weight of her isolation. As she packed her belongings to vacate the apartment, the stark reality of starting over alone loomed over her. Every box she filled carried echoes of her shared life with Ethan, a life she had taken for granted. The letter amid her packing, Emily found a sealed envelope tucked inside a drawer. The handwriting was unmistakably Ethan's, neat and deliberate. Her heart raced as she opened it. The letter was short but devastatingly clear. "Emily, this isn't the life I envisioned, but it's the one you've chosen. I'll carry my share of the pain, but I'll do so with dignity. You made your choices. Now it's time I make mine. Ethan." His words were neither bitter nor cruel, but struck with the force of truth. Emily read and reread the letter, tears streaming down her face. Ethan's calm detachment only deepened her regret. She had lost more than a husband. She had lost the one person who had always believed in her, and the loss was irreparable. A risky move. Emily realized that if she didn't act, she would lose everything, including the last shreds of her self-respect. She started applying for jobs, hoping her credentials would outweigh the rumors. But each rejection email felt like another nail in the coffin of her former life. Without Ethan's influence or their shared network, her once impressive resume seemed to have lost its luster. Desperate for leverage, she reached out to Derek. Against her better judgment, she agreed to meet him for coffee, hoping to rekindle some semblance of the relationship they had shared. But the meeting was a disaster from the start. Derek arrived late, his confidence bordering on arrogance. He greeted her with a smirk, dismissing her struggles with casual indifference. "I told you," he said, sipping his espresso. "I'm not the commitment type. What we had was fun, but that's all it was." Emily's stomach churned. "I left everything for you," she said, her voice trembling. "Doesn't that mean anything?" Derek leaned back, shrugging. Your choice, not mine. His words solidified what Emily had feared all along. She had risked her life for someone who saw her as nothing more than a fleeting thrill. Ethan's triumph while Emily floundered. Ethan continued to thrive. She learned through mutual acquaintances that he had been promoted to partner at his firm, a move that came with significant financial rewards. Photos on social media showed him attending high-profile events, often accompanied by a stunning, confident woman named Clara. Clara was everything Emily wasn't. Grounded, self-assured, and unpretentious. Mutual friends whispered about how Ethan had finally found someone who appreciated him without taking him for granted. The knowledge stung Emily deeply. She had once been the center of Ethan's universe, and now she had been replaced. A desperate attempt haunted by her crumbling life and Ethan's flourishing one. Emily resolved to confront him. She rehearsed her words, crafting an apology she hoped would convey the depth of her remorse. She found him at a local art gallery, an event he had organized to benefit a charity he supported. The room was buzzing with energy, Ethan at the center, radiating confidence. Emily hesitated at the entrance, but her desperation propelled her forward. "Ethan," she called softly, her voice barely carrying over the crowd. He turned, his expression unreadable. For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of the man who had once loved her. But when Clara appeared at his side, slipping her arm through his, the moment was gone. "Emily," he said, his tone polite but distant. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you," she said, her voice trembling. "I wanted to apologize for everything. I was selfish and I ruined the best thing in my life." "I'm so sorry, Ethan." He studied her for a long moment before replying. "I appreciate your apology," he said finally, "but we're past that now. I've moved on, and I hope you can too." His words were kind but firm, leaving no room for reconciliation. As Clara guided him back into the crowd, Emily realized the depth of her loss. Ethan wasn't angry or vengeful, he was simply done. The lesson that night, Emily sat alone in a motel room, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. For the first time, she acknowledged the truth. She had taken Ethan's love for granted, mistaking his quiet strength for weakness. She had sought freedom without understanding its cost, and in doing so, she had lost the one person who truly valued her. As she stared out the window, the glow of the city lights reflecting in her tears, Emily resolved to rebuild her life. Not for Ethan, not for Derek, but for herself. The road ahead would be lonely, but she knew now that it was the only way forward. As the days turned into weeks, Emily began the painful process of piecing her life back together. Living in a modest apartment far from the luxurious home she had once shared with Ethan, she took a job at a small tech startup as an entry-level customer service representative, a far cry from her previous position as a senior manager at Ethan's company. Her new co-workers were kind but distant. Emily's confidence, once her defining trait, had been chipped away by her fall from grace. Yet, in the quiet moments of her new reality, she discovered something she hadn't felt in years: humility. A glimpse of Ethan's new life. Emily avoided social media as much as possible, but one evening, curiosity got the better of her. She found herself scrolling through Ethan's profile, where posts highlighted his burgeoning relationship with Clara. They seemed happy, effortlessly so. One photo caught her attention. Ethan and Clara standing arm in arm at a charity gala, a dazzling cityscape behind them. Ethan looked relaxed, his smile genuine. For the first time, Emily didn't feel the sharp sting of jealousy. Instead, she felt a deep sadness for what she had thrown away. "Clara makes him happy," Emily whispered to herself, her voice breaking. She turned off her phone and decided it was time to let go, truly and completely. A surprising opportunity at the tech startup, Emily's hard work and determination did not go unnoticed. Her manager, a perceptive woman named Mia, called her into the office one afternoon. "You've been doing great, Emily," Mia said. "I know you have a background in project management. Would you be interested in helping us with a new product launch?" Emily hesitated. The fear of failure loomed large, but she also knew this was an opportunity to reclaim a piece of the person she used to be. She nodded. I'd love to. Over the next few months, Emily poured herself into the project. She worked late hours, learned new skills, and became a key player in the team. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of purpose. An unexpected encounter one evening. As Emily left the office after another long day, she ran into Ethan. He was at a nearby coffee shop, seated alone with a laptop. For a moment, she froze, unsure whether to approach him. But before she could decide, Ethan looked up and saw her. Emily, he said, his tone neutral. What are you doing here? I work nearby, she replied, awkwardly gesturing toward her office building. You? Just catching up on some work, Ethan said. His eyes flicked over her modest outfit and tired expression, a subtle but telling contrast to the polished image she once presented. How's everything? It's good, she said, struggling to meet his gaze. I'm starting over. Ethan nodded, a faint hint of approval in his expression. That's good to hear. As the silence stretched, Emily realized this wasn't the time for a lengthy conversation. She smiled weakly. Well, I should let you get back to work. It was good seeing you, Ethan. You too, Emily, he said, his voice sincere. As she walked away, Emily felt a strange mix of emotions. Regret, relief, and a small, fragile sense of closure. A test of strength, the next few months were a test of Emily's resolve. The startup's product launch faced numerous setbacks, and tensions ran high. Emily often found herself thinking about the lessons she had learned from working alongside Ethan. His meticulous attention to detail, his ability to stay calm under pressure. For all the mistakes she had made, Ethan had set an example she still aspired to emulate. When the product finally launched successfully, Mia gathered the team to celebrate. Emily, she said, raising a glass, this wouldn't have been possible without your leadership. Thank you. As her co-workers cheered, Emily felt a swell of pride she hadn't experienced in years. She had accomplished this on her own, not as Ethan's wife, not as someone's partner, but as herself. A chance to rebuild one evening. As Emily sat in her apartment reviewing her finances, she received an unexpected email from Ethan. The subject line read, "A proposal." Curious and apprehensive, she opened it. The message was brief. Emily, I heard about your success with the product launch. Congratulations. I have a project coming up that could benefit from your expertise. If you're interested, let me know. Emily stared at the screen, her mind racing. The idea of working with Ethan again was both terrifying and tempting. It felt like a chance to prove herself, to him, to herself, to everyone who had doubted her. After a long moment, she replied, Thank you, Ethan. I'd like to discuss this further. As she hit send, Emily felt the weight of her past lifting piece by piece. She wasn't the same person she had been when Ethan had left her, and she knew there was still a long way to go. But for the first time, she saw a future where she wasn't defined by her mistakes but by her growth. Emily walked into Ethan's office for the first time in over a year, her heart pounding in her chest. The space was largely the same: sleek furniture, modern decor, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city skyline. Ethan rose from his chair as she entered, extending a hand. Emily, he said with a small smile. Thanks for coming. She shook his hand, noting how steady his grip was compared to her trembling fingers. Thanks for reaching out. As they sat across from each other, Ethan handed her a set of documents detailing the project. It was a software initiative aimed at streamlining workflows for small businesses, a departure from the larger-scale operations the company usually handled. We're struggling to nail down the user experience, Ethan explained. I've seen what you did at the startup, and I think your perspective could really help us. Emily scanned the documents, impressed by the complexity of the project. It's ambitious, she said, but I see where I could contribute. Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her. I have to admit, I wasn't sure if you'd accept my offer. I wasn't sure I would either, Emily admitted, meeting his gaze. But I've spent a lot of time trying to rebuild myself. This feels like the next step. Treading a fine line over the next few weeks, Emily immersed herself in the project. Working alongside Ethan was a challenge. His high standards and perfectionist tendencies often clashed with her more creative approach. But instead of backing down, Emily found herself rising to the occasion, pushing back when necessary and proving her worth. Their interactions were professional but cordial, with occasional moments of warmth that reminded Emily of the bond they once shared. She couldn't deny that seeing Ethan every day stirred old feelings, but she focused on the work, determined not to let personal emotions cloud her judgment. Clara occasionally stopped by the office, her presence a stark reminder of the life Ethan had built without Emily. Despite her initial discomfort, Emily found that she didn't harbor the resentment she once might have. Clara seemed kind and supportive, and Emily could see why Ethan had chosen her. The night that changed everything one evening, as Emily stayed late to finalize a presentation, Ethan walked into the conference room with 2 cups of coffee. "You're still here?" he asked, setting a cup in front of her. "I wanted to make sure everything's perfect for tomorrow," Emily said, stretching her neck. "Thanks for the coffee." Ethan sat across from her, his expression thoughtful. "You've done an incredible job, Emily. The team respects you. So do I." His words caught her off guard. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means a lot." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "You've changed. I see it every day. You're stronger now, more confident." Emily met his gaze, her heart pounding. "I had to be. Losing everything forces you to figure out what you're really made of." "I regret the way things ended between us," Ethan admitted. "I've thought about it a lot." Emily's breath hitched. "Ethan, don't. You have a life now. Clara knows about us." Ethan interrupted. "She supports me, but she also knows I'll always care about you." Emily looked away, conflicted. "We can't go back, Ethan. Too much has happened." "I'm not asking to go back," Ethan said. "I'm asking if we can move forward, whatever that means." The fork in the road. Emily spent the weekend reflecting on Ethan's words. Part of her longed to explore what moving forward with him might look like, but another part knew the dangers of reopening old wounds. She had worked so hard to rebuild her life, and she wasn't sure if revisiting the past would help or hinder her progress. On Monday morning, she made her decision. She walked into Ethan's office, a sense of calm washing over her. "I've been thinking about what you said." Ethan set down his pen, giving her his full attention. "I think we need to keep this professional," Emily said, her voice steady. "We've both changed, and I don't want to jeopardize the progress we've made, individually and together as colleagues." Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand, and for what it's worth, I respect your decision." A true new beginning. As the project neared completion, Emily felt a sense of pride and accomplishment she hadn't experienced in years. The team's feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and Ethan made a point of acknowledging her contributions during the final presentation. After the meeting, Ethan approached her with a small smile. "You did it, Emily." "We did it," she corrected, shaking his hand. As she packed up her things that evening, Ethan handed her an envelope. "This is for you," he said. "A thank you for everything you've done." Inside was a handwritten letter and a check, a bonus that far exceeded her expectations. The letter was simple but heartfelt, expressing Ethan's gratitude for her hard work and the growth he had witnessed in her. Emily smiled, tucking the letter into her bag. "Thank you, Ethan, for the opportunity and for believing in me." As she walked out of the office, Emily felt a sense of closure. She didn't need validation from Ethan or anyone else. She had found it within herself. For the first time, she was ready to embrace her future with open arms.